Hi, everybody, and welcome to the fifth Ashoka Pioneer Hangout, focus on play. My name is Daniel Plaut, and I'm going to be facilitating our discussion today, discussion based on measurement and impact of play-to-learn programs, focusing in on an approach from three different Ashoka Pioneer Hangout with us. So thanks, everybody, for joining. I'll start with a brief round of introductions, followed by questions for our three Hangout participants. For those of you following online, you can tweet us questions using the hashtag #play2learn, so play the number 2 and learn. And I'll try to point those to our panelists whenever we have one. And so I'll start now with introductions. Again, I'm Daniel Plaut. I work at the Results for Development Institute here in Washington, D.C. And we are a learning partner of the LEGO Foundation, who've collaborated with Ashoka for a little while now on their Re-imagine Learning Challenge. Specifically, I work under the Center for Education Innovations, where we identify, analyze, and connect promising education innovations working to serve those living in poverty. So I'll be facilitating the discussion today, and our panelists include Andy Forrest from Maker Kids, who provides a learning space for kids in Toronto to really interact and participate with technology rather than just kind of be consumers of it. They are able to then play and build and actually learn from actually doing and interacting with technology. And they're based in Toronto. We have Emilyn Green from the Community Science Workshops for Rural California. And they provide learning environments where young people and their families in California can actually learn about science through interaction with the world around them and have a interactive and playful experience with the environment with them in California. And then finally, Sara Gil from Malaria Spot, which uses video games as a means of teaching children about treatable diseases, but also important as a means of improving diagnosis for those diseases. So actually having the games themselves serve as a way to diagnose malaria and tuberculosis. And I've just been corrected here by my friend John from Ashoka saying that actually Maker Kids has recently become STEAMLabs, so apologies for that, Andy. But we can maybe start with you since we are talking about STEAMLabs, Andy. Can you tell us a little bit? How do you see the main objectives of STEAMLabs, and how do you see the playful part of it actually leading to learning outcomes and leading to a learning experience for the kids that are part of it?
Sure, absolutely. Thanks, Daniel. Yeah, I see that the purpose of the play is that it inspires the kids. It gets them engaged, gets them interested in what they're doing. And I think that that's really the key to keeping them excited and interested in learning, is keeping them engaged and interested. So we try and have the play first and then build the educational activities around that. So that if they're trying to accomplish something that's interesting to themselves, it's really easy to say, oh, well, hey, you can use this cool bit of Arduino technology to make your super cool idea actually happen, and here's how you use it, and we can teach them as they need it to accomplish what they're playing with.
So is the idea in some way to have the play and the creativity come first and actually have that lead into then understanding how things work and understanding how you can make things work and make your idea happen?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. We have them play first and be creative first without even worrying about how they're going to accomplish their creativity. And then the learning comes in as they realize that, yes, you can do this, and we'll help you, and here's the stuff you need to do it.
That's great. Emilyn, I'm turning to you. How do you see that same question in terms of how the kids that work in your program really approach their learning? Is it really about play first and then understanding how things work, or how do you see that happening within your program?
I would not distinguish between the two, between playing and understanding how things work. I think that it's by dividing playing and learning, we've done a really big disservice to education. And I think that there's plenty of cognitive science about the activities the things that are going on in a child's brain while they play. If they're playing, as Annie was just saying, if they're playing if they're fully engaged, if they're following their own interests, then almost always, like if you watch kids play in a kid-only zone, like not even in a learning environment, what they're doing is trying to figure something out, whether they're figuring something out interpersonally, or they're figuring something out with a treehouse, or they're figuring something out with a ball game. Kids are always building their knowledge, and they're making sense of the world around them. And so the way we look at it is we provide an environment, and we stock that environment with stimulating specimens. We have a lot of fossils and rocks and bones and live and dead animals. With all the equipment that kids would need for making and tinkering. So we have electronic stations, we have soldering guns, we have hand and power tools, and we have recycled materials. And we think if we can put those environments in a place where kids are already playing, because a large part of our work is about geography, is about making space accessible to where youth are already walking to and from their homes and schools in low-income communities. And if we put those spaces where kids are already playing, and if we make it clear that it's a playful space, our communication with the kids about it being a playful space is really more about letting them know they don't have to turn off their learning when they come in the door. A lot of times if you overemphasize to kids that this is about learning, this is an educational space, this is a science center, you have to sign up for classes, you have to come here every Friday, and then you're going to sit down and do an experiment. They actually turn off the playful part of their brains that is what is going to help them learn the most. So for us, a lot of the playful atmosphere of our space is about, A, we think that's how learning happens best. It's inextricable processes for the kids.
Sure.
And it's also about access, because that's what makes kids comfortable coming in and engaging deeply at their own convenience. And what we see with that is that kids come back over and over again and deepen their experiences there.
That's great. I really like how you frame that in terms of, I think it's true that actually sometimes we separate play and learn as totally different things when in fact they're one and the same, and I think it's a really interesting way of addressing it. I think that the Re-imagine Learning idea from Ashoka I think really gets at that point. I wonder, Sara, if we could jump to you now. I know that one of the interesting things about the work that you do is that not only is it teaching and actually informing people about preventable diseases or treatable diseases, but also actually doing a big service in terms of actually facilitating diagnosis. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about, one, how that works, and two, how you sort of measure your impact in terms of how well people that are participating in the game are learning about this disease, in addition to actually serving to diagnose it.
Okay, so for the first part, what we do is to work with real medical images. So they are real. In fact, we have digitized some of them with the help of a mobile and a microscope. So we just take images of, for instance, to diagnose malaria, you need to take a blood sample and look for the parasites. So we do photos of that kind of images. And then that's the kind of images that you play with at the game. So, and what we do basically is to combine the results of several players, and doing this, we found out that the result was like really, really precise. I mean, if you combine it like 20 players, you could get the same precision as one technician. So that's kind of awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what was the other part of the question? Sorry.
I guess so. I think I have questions about that alone. So is it to the point now where you're actually where you're giving medical practitioners the ability to upload these slides every day, and that they're actually being diagnosed in real time by the players, or is that something that's coming?
Not yet. That's coming. In fact, we are planning to go to Mozambique to do it real time, just like you say. But for now, it's not implemented. Right now, you can play with images that have been already diagnosed by medical doctors. So what we are doing is to test that this really works.
Great. Okay. And so I guess getting to my second part of the question, one of the big challenges is I think with all of these programs that you're running in terms of using playful things as a means to get to learning is actually having evidence or being able to measure what sort of learning is being affected. And I'm curious how each of you have approached that topic. I think a lot of times when we talk about learning in general, there's kind of a mentality that only really test results are able to measure learning in academics. And I'm curious, the different sorts of learning that is being done through the playful activities that each of you do, how are those measured, and if they are measured?
Okay.
So maybe Sarah, we'll start with you and then we'll go backwards.
Yeah, perfect. So for us, it's a little bit difficult to have like a precise measurement, but we do have some kind of idea because, for instance, when we go to the schools and do the activity with the kids, we can see how they are learning things. For instance, they don't know that there are diseases like malaria that they are killing so much people. So the first reaction is like, wow, this is happening in the world. So we have like instant feedback that they are learning about it. And then apart from that, what we do, for instance, is to ask for feedback. And then we have noticed that people tell us that they have found out about things that they didn't know about. And for instance, we have seen in discussion boards in websites that they start to talk about the game, but then go on talking about tuberculosis and malaria and exchanging facts about it. So we know that people is learning, but it's a little bit hard to measure it.
Yeah, sure. It's definitely challenging. Emilyn, I'm wondering if you could provide your perspective on that question.
There is so much to say. It's one of the main challenges for all informal educators. And in our case, we run drop-in centers. So because of our focus on access and equity in underserved communities, it's really important to us that the core structure of our central program is that the space is open on a drop-in basis, and families and children can choose to come and go. That means that kids in foster care can participate in our programs because as they get moved from house to house, maybe they're too far away for a couple months, but when they come back, the door's open and they can still come in because they didn't have to sign up for a given program. It means that kids whose parents actually move for agricultural work can participate in our programs because they can come as much as they want in December when there's not a lot of work, and in the summer they can disappear, and we know we'll see them again whenever they're able to come back. So that's the rationale for our drop-in structure. And we also find that we get richer engagement with families and children if they can engage on their own schedules. And that means that we're not tracking participants. The other thing we do is that we don't ask for permission slips. One thing there's the whole debate about free-range parenting in the American media lately. And I realized, most first and second generation immigrant communities are free-range parenting. That's what they do because the parents are working and they have not yet accepted an ethic that, there's still a cultural ethic that kids are free to run around after school. So because of that, we don't ask for parent involvement or permission slips for kids to come into the space. So all of that means that we really engage directly with kids and there's very few barriers to access. But it also means we're not tracking individual participants, we're not recording how many times people visit, and we're certainly not doing pre- and post surveys because we don't have, a lot of times there's no post, which is wonderful, right? The relationship doesn't end. The child's engagement with the space just builds and builds and builds. So because of all that, we've had to be really creative about how we're measuring impact because those are all the sort of standard science center ways that you deal with measuring impact, where you ask a kid a question at the beginning, do you like science? 6 months later you ask, do you like science? And their answers change. Hey presto, you taught them something.
Right.
So, and I mean there's a lot of study about how that's limited anyway. So what we've been doing is we've been trying to capture the behavior of our facilitators and our students in the act of doing playful learning together through video documentation. And also, we're starting to work a little bit with journals, where if kids are using journals to help them in their own project creation and experiment creation process, then we can look at those journals and we can find evidence of their thought processes. And that's pretty non-invasive because it's actually, we're providing them with a tool that helps their process get better. Kids love making little plans, drawing plans, having a notebook. And it's their work and they're generating it on their own terms, but then we can look at it and say, hey look, here's a kid drawing two diagrams, and in the second one you can see that they've unpacked a little more of how the system is working. So those are the kinds of things we're working on, and for us the priority is always to be non-invasive, to not insert some measurement process into our space that would make a kid step back and feel uncomfortable, or would divide them from their fluid process with their project or their experiment.
Sure. Interesting. Andy, I wonder if question to you. Have you also had to be creative about how you measure your impact and how you measure the learning that's happening at your center?
Yeah, we absolutely have, and one of the reasons I'm excited to be part of this conversation today is just find out more about how other people are doing it too. And we've done some similar things, and we also run lots of drop-in programs, but also some 10-week programs, so we can look at some progress. With the drop-in, we try and give as much access as possible too, and it's really hard to measure that. So with those kinds of activities, and also like going to Maker Faire and going to public events, we've done a lot of tracking of just numbers. How many kids are we reaching is kind of our main way of doing that. And then we've tried to have conversations with individuals to find out more about what they're learning and bring that forward so we can learn from them too. But we haven't been able to be systematic with that. But it's really interesting to see the kids' choices and see what they're choosing as an indicator of what learning they're doing, because we do things like we go into a school classroom. We just finished up an activity where we built a high-tech model of Ontario's power generation system with an Internet of Things connected section, so it pulls down live power generation data and has an LED display that they built with 3D printed houses, and it's so much fun, and it's teaching the normal curriculum. And we did this over a 3-week period, and every week the teacher gave them a choice at recess to go out and play at recess or to stay and keep working on this stuff. And the majority every time chose to stay. And so it's neat to just see them voting with their feet to say, yes, this is the way I want to learn. And now we're doing a presentation at the end where they're gonna use this model to teach adults about Ontario's power system. So I'm going to be documenting that carefully to see, like, so have they learned all of the material that's normally in the curriculum? Have they learned it in this different kind of way and document it? But I'm very aware that this kind of, I like to say, like, the plural of anecdote is not data. And we have lots of these anecdotes, but I want to turn this into data. And I'm really excited about, I'm starting to talk to some educators who are in traditional university settings about how to measure all this stuff. And I think the first step is to decide what we want to measure. And so that's where this conversation with Emilyn and Sara and other people comes in too, because I think one of the biggest things that we should be measuring is agency. It's just how much the kids that come through our programs feel that they have the ability to make a change in the world that they want. And if we have some standardized way to measure that across a whole bunch of these playful learning programs to show the broad impact, I think that would be fantastic. And I'm not sure what best way to do that is, but I think some of the things you mentioned, Emilyn, about the before and after surveys, I'd love to figure out a way to non-invasively, like you said, to ask those questions of even drop-in participants and even people that are coming through a 15-minute activity at a Maker Faire. Like, did this open up your eyes to something? And I think that's going to be really important for the long-term impact measurement of this movement that we're all a part of.
Can I jump in? I want to add something
please do.
Because you sparked a bunch of thoughts. So one, I love, Andy, that you talked about choice, student choice, as a valid measure of engagement and also of learning. And that's actually one of our 4 areas that we look at. We look at engagement, self-identity, skills, and choices that kids make. And I think it's a sign that the world is run by adults, the extent to which kids' choices are not considered a valid measure of success in a program. Because kids are very picky. and they don't choose lightly. There's very little they have control over in their life. So when they have control to choose something, it's because it really matters to them. And the other thing I want to say is that talking about what is it that we want to measure. So I talked about those 4 areas, and really we've ended up looking. We stay away from science content as a measure of learning because we're an informal science educational program. But we say what we're looking for skills and dispositions and changes in how the student perceives themselves, and that's more important to us than any given fact. and also that's going to last longer. That's the kind of learning that propels a kid through life and helps them to learn all the content they want in the world, because they feel confident about asking questions, or like you were saying, agency. They'll feel confident about finding something out when they want to know. And they have the skills to do that. They have the analytical skills, the observational skills, and the systematic thinking skills. So we've really focused on that as a way to position our playful learning, our community science workshops. And we've been really excited about, in the U.S., the Next Generation Science Standards, because they have a whole section on dispositions and skills as not, I can't say separate from content, because the whole point of NGSS is to interleave everything. But those science and engineering practices in the new science standards are really something we can hold on to, because if you run down that list of what those practices are, they're what you see kids doing in a playful learning space every day.
Yeah, I think thanks for that input, Emilyn. I think it's really interesting, because I think when we talk about measuring learning through play, there are a couple questions that come up. One is in terms of what you're actually measuring, like you're talking about. So I think a lot of times programs they're not necessarily able to measure a whole lot other than just access, other than just the reach of how many kids they're able to get to. And I think both you and Andy have highlighted some really interesting ways of potentially measuring the impact. I like the idea of actually having the input from the child as a way of determining their learning, and as a way of kind of understanding how they see themselves interacting with the program and with the learning they're doing. The second part of that question is really, again, how you measure that. It's not even about the access versus impact, it's actually how you do it. And I think, a lot of times in education there's such a focus on testing as the way to measure everything, that I thought it was really interesting from Andy's perspective, that the idea of their performance on a task like explaining
Sorry, the video just dropped out for me from Daniel.
Yeah, I can't hear Daniel or see him.
Okay.
We will see what happens.
Yes. Well, we can keep talking while he's
yeah, we can keep talking.
He's returning.
Andy, I was going to add to what you were saying too about interviewing people. We just started interviewing our alumni in a systematic way, where we're actually chasing down. We finally got funding, because it's really expensive also. One thing that needs to be talked about in measuring impact is how expensive it is for a program that's really focused on serving youth. So we finally got funding from a funder who wanted to help us out with documenting the impact of our programs, and we were able to chase down alumni. So we've been recording interviews with alumni from 5 of our programs in the state. And it's been fascinating to see some of the, again, plural of anecdote, not data, but getting, when young adult after young adult is saying the same thing about what our program meant to them, it's been really great.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. I'd love to, if you're able to share some of the survey questions, I'd love to see them so we can, because I think standards, like the more of us that are asking the same questions, the better, because it can show the broader impact with even more data.
Sarah, can you hear us? No, maybe not.
Oh, we lost you for a while, Daniel, but then you came back.
Oh, you did? Okay. Well, maybe we'll get Sarah back too. It's like you're in how you're measuring this, and there isn't really a one place where I think, I'm not aware of it at least, where a lot of these programs that are focused on play to learn to really come together and share a lot of these resources and have a discussion about how they're thinking about measuring their impact. Are you aware of anything like that, Andy or Emilyn?
Yeah, I can jump in. So we're actually a member of something called the California Tinkering After School Network. So our community science workshops are part of that. It's led out of the Exploratorium, and it's part of an NSF-funded project called the Collaboratory that's really trying to bring educational researchers and educational practitioners into a collaborative relationship, because a lot of time it's an inspecting relationship instead of a collaborative relationship. So they're doing we're doing really interesting, groundbreaking work on changing the whole dynamic in how you set up an educational research project, what the values are, what the basic questions are, what the goals are, and how work is carried out. And so we're putting together there should be some tools getting published out of that at the end of this summer, because that project is wrapping up and starting to publish some of the tools that we've been looking at. And we've been looking at particularly designing professional development to help staff do tinkering programs, which are a playful learning program, and with a specific lens for equity and access for underserved youth. So that's one resource out there. I don't know of, I mean, it's just in California. It's us and TechBridge and the Discovery Cube and the Exploratorium. And I don't know of anything really larger that's because there's a lot of resources out there for informal science education, but informal science education isn't always playful learning. So that's like a more precise subset under there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we now have Sara back. Sara, are you there?
Yeah, I have
Hi.
Some problems.
Welcome back. I wanted to ask you, so one of the things that's interesting about your program, and I'm not sure to the extent that the other programs also have this component, but they might. I'm not familiar with them enough to know. But one of the interesting things about your program is that actually there's the added, in addition to the learning, there's the added kind of benefit of actually doing a service in terms of
I'm losing you again.
Yep, Daniel's out.
Okay. We are having a lot of problems, aren't we?
We are. You can probably answer his question, though, even if he doesn't finish.
Well, I was not sure where he was going, but we have found out that it's a great value. I mean, people really keep playing because they know that they are helping. Even for kids, it's like a great motivation. So we have some kids that have been keeping playing like for days on a row because they knew that this was going to be useful to help people. So that's kind of awesome.
Yeah, and that's another way that people underestimate kids often, is underestimate their, like Andy, you were talking about their desire to make a change in the world around them. That's a huge part of it's a huge sort of untapped resource is kids' own sense of civic participation and responsibility. Yeah.
Yeah, when they have a purpose, when they can see something that they can make a difference with, it's really remarkable.
Yeah.
In fact,
one of the ways we tap.
Sorry. Go ahead, please. We had the case of a really bad student class, like he was really lousy, but he loved the game because he was really good at it, and also the idea of being able to help people. So the teacher was really excited, like, wow, this is a way to get like bad students to get interested into science, and so it was really great.
Yeah, that actually ties into what I was going to say, which is one of the ways that we give kids a chance to take responsibility and be leaders is that we ask them to do a lot of peer-to-peer learning in our workshops. So we hire teenagers, and we offer teenagers really serious leadership positions, helping smaller kids, and we even do it, we cascade it in all our programs. So almost all our programs have work with third graders. Our middle school students work with first graders, and it's amazing. Like you were saying, Sara, like you were just saying, you know, the bad, quote unquote, bad kids, right? The kids who have a hard time in regular school or regular learning environments. Often handing them some responsibility and some more agency in what's going on around them, and you get the most dedicated, responsible, and sort of inspired leaders of other kids, which is a wonderful result.
Yeah, that is fantastic to see. I love that when there's kids teaching each other. We try and encourage that as well. And I love the difference when we're teaching a class in something, say, Scratch video game programming, and there'll be one student in that class who kind of knows a bunch of it already, and you can see at the beginning of the class they're kind of worried, like, oh, I'm kind of bored, I know this already. But then as soon as you make them aware that, okay, you have some cool skills here already, how about you teach this part of the class? You teach everybody how to do this, and they kind of light up with that authority, and great. And then they're more engaged with the rest of the group, and they're feeling more confident themselves. It's really awesome to see that.
And that's where with that when you think about how to measure the impact of that, right? That you get it's so rich and complicated and multi-layered, the interaction between one kid and another kid, where they're sharing information and sharing expertise. And that's one of the reasons we've fallen on video as one of the few ways that we feel we can really capture those moments, because in the moment, it's so much is going on. You have a 3-minute exchange between a kid who's an expert on some like an expert on soldering and a kid who's just learning to solder. And there is so much going on in that 3-minute exchange. There's no way for a facilitator who's running a tinkering program with 30 kids to capture it, and it wouldn't be appropriate for them to stop the action to capture it. So the challenge there, one, we've been able to do a little bit with video. I kind of want to get into something. The other thing I was going to say, asking about where innovative work has been going on. There was a it was an Institute of Library and Museum Sciences grant that went to a bunch of different museums to set up youth media labs. And one of them was at NYSCI in the Bronx. And they have been doing really interesting video diary work where kids make their own video diary of their own learning process at the end of the day. And they can use that as data for recording impact. And it's also something that, because it's a media lab, it's actually an organic part of the kid's experience to make their video diary. That's something that we couldn't do for permission slip reasons right now, but I like the form of that kind of impact measurement.
That's really nice. One similar thing that we've done too, which is at the end of a program, we try and always ask the kids what advice they would have for someone else who is learning something similar or is working on a similar project, because they very frequently tell us directly about the things that they learned. And you'll see kids who had a lot of trouble working with their group because they didn't listen to the other people's ideas. At the end of the program, they'll say, make sure you listen to the other people's ideas. You can get things out of it. And so I've been thinking, I liked your what you said earlier about documentation and journaling. It would be really interesting to maybe structure that a little bit, and so that there's some specific questions that are asked of the kids in the journal, just to spark it even. But then it could be, because then you were talking about, Emilyn, about mining the journal for interesting data afterwards about their learning experiences, and if you primed them with some sample questions, then you could get some consistent answers to those specific questions. That might be a really great way to measure some of that.
The people I know who are doing journaling the most successfully are the folks who are in the Exploratorium Tinkering program, and they're working with a Boys and Girls Club in South San Francisco in a really low-income neighborhood. What they do is, instead of having question prompts that might accidentally constrain the work, because then it's just the adult thinking of what the prompts are, they share their own journal. They make their own journal about a tinkering process, and they read from it and show the kids what they've drawn, so that they're modeling what a journal could be like, and then kids can feel inspired and understand sort of the direction to go in. Like, oh, I could draw a picture of it at different stages, or oh, I could write down my materials list, or oh, I could write down a problem that I faced and how I came over it. But they're not doing it by a list of questions, they're doing it by modeling, and then they have the kids share from their journals throughout the whole program. It's a little different program from ours. It's enrollment based, so they can do that. And then the kids learn from each other and sort of build like a group understanding of what can be in journals, and they inspire each other. And it gets better and better as time goes on. So it's just an interesting. So you end up with everyone's drawing a picture and everyone's writing down what frustrated them, but you didn't start by saying, draw a picture, what frustrated you? So.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That's a really good way to do it.
That's
Takes
great.
a lot of time.
And apologies for dropping off for a second there, and thank you all for continuing the discussion. I think that sounds really great. I think one of the questions that I have is really about, I think we are kind of in a very particular little silo here where we're talking. It seems the four of us are very interested in this concept of play to learn, and we believe in it, and we think it's an engaging way to really foster learning for anyone. But I think that the overall trend is really the opposite. I think that it seems to me like there's a lot more focus on academics and a lot more focus on testing and things like that. And I'm curious, how do we kind of convince people of the value of this sort of learning, specifically considering that the evidence is, like you said, really challengingly measure in a way that is comparable to some of the other measurements that are out there in terms of quantitative measurements of academic learning. I think my question, just to rephrase it again so it's a little bit more concrete, is it a matter of convincing people the value of play to learn, or is it a matter of developing the evidence tools and the data collection tools that are convincing themselves? Is it a matter of convincing people of the methods, or
Oh, we lost him again.
no, I'm still here.
Oh, hi. I lost you. It was just me.
Hi.
I got most of what you said.
Any reactions to that? Did you guys not catch all of it?
Yeah, I think you heard it. I think it's a really complex question. It's a really good question. And I think in some parts, you alluded to this, that we're in the traditional academic system that we're kind of measuring some of the wrong things. And so I think a big part of our job is to convince people that different things are important than just purely academic measurements of your knowledge. But I think that we need to, as the playful learning educators, we need to develop some ways of measuring the effectiveness of what we do, but we also have to convince people that the outcomes that we're striving towards are just as important as those academic outcomes as well. So it's kind of two parts, I think, and part of it is probably going to be to get more people on board. We probably are going to have to show the increased abilities of the participants of our programs in traditional academic settings too, because I think that the more self-confidence you have, the more sort of personal skills, like the different skills that you were talking about, the observation, Emilyn, the observation, systematic thinking, and that kind of stuff is just going to help them in a traditional academic setting as well. So I think we can show that kids are going to be excelling more in academic, but we need to change the conversation too to show that there's a lot of other things that are just as important too.
So for me, the way I think about this is a lot of it is based on the incredible poverty of the public school system in the state that I work in California, because one of the reasons that we have kept away from, for instance, looking at kids' grades. Do the kids' grades improve? Like that kid who's, like Sarah was talking about, the kid who's a trouble kid in school comes to our program and does fantastic work and is fully engaged and thinks, and thinking through everything and fully and responsible and all that. That kid doesn't necessarily do better in school because they're part of our program. Sometimes they do worse because they know what learning could look like and they cannot stomach what they're asked to do in school. And that's not, there are a lot of great teachers in our public schools. We have a really good relationships with a lot of teachers in the districts that we work with. A lot of people are working really hard, but the system as a whole is slanted towards, like you were saying, Daniel, is slanted towards thinking of kids as piggy banks that you drop knowledge in, and after you've dropped in enough knowledge, you can unscrew the bottom and count all the knowledge that you dropped in the piggy bank, and then you've done your job. And as hard as individual teachers fight against that to make really creative learning opportunities available to their kids in school, that is the system, and it has been for that's been the main slant of public schools in the United States for at least the last 12 years, and largely due to the shift towards testing in the early 2000s. So for us, it's hard to say, on the other hand, we want our kids to win. We want them to get to college. We want them to get the career they want, and to do that, they do have to be able to navigate the
system as it is.
The system as it is. And so that's a really strong tension in our work, where to some extent we're teaching kids to expect better from learning, and to expect more respect from educators, because we respect them and we give them space to be the agents of their own learning. And that makes it really hard for them to deal with school in some cases. And on the other hand, we want to help them see, the ultimate goal is, can we help kids apply that systematic thinking to the school system as a whole? Say, look, just get to the end of high school, you get to go to college, and you get to start doing all kinds of different things. And those are the kind of conversations I end up having with kids a lot.
Sara, did you have anything to add on this question?
Yeah, I guess in our case it's a little different because we are working with video games, with games online. So I think that teachers and parents are kind of ours, because they know that kids are going to play games online. So they think that this can only improve that time. I mean, that as long as they are going to play, for sure, at least they are going to play to something that they do think that they are going to learn with. So I think that we are very lucky with that, because teachers are really excited about having that kind of platform to be able to introduce kids to science and to another problems. So maybe it's some kind of advantage we play with.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, and I think what's really unique and interesting about all the three models that you all work in is that really you're able to, every single one of them seems to me like it's an opt-in system for children. They have the choice to participate, and they have the choice to engage with that learning. And it seems obviously from the success of all three of them that they are choosing to do so. So it's obviously something that it's bringing in their interest and bringing in their excitement about learning. And maybe it is about not necessarily, there's like the concept of maybe if you don't tell kids that vegetables are good for them, then they won't have a problem eating them, kind of thing. And maybe the idea that we separate learning and play from each other constantly actually can sometimes be a detractor as opposed to an incentivizer. And presenting them together can actually just be a way of, like you all are doing, a way of really incentivizing participation. So I think we are about, sorry, Emilyn, did you want to add anything?
I wanted to add one more thing. Oh Lord, it went out of my head. I want to add one more thing. Oh, your question about do we need to just convince people that playful learning is valuable in and of itself, or do we need to find tools to translate the skills that kids are picking up in playful learning to a more traditional academic setting? That's sort of a paraphrase of your question.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the traditional academic setting needs to become more like playful learning. That's actually the answer that I have for it, and how to make that happen is maybe more about translating the skills kids pick up in playful learning to real life contexts, industry contexts, workplace contexts, as an argument for why all of education should look more like this. So that's a big dream.
I'm finding some success with that, Emilyn, in infiltrating the traditional school system through technology. Because I think a lot of teachers know they don't have the skills to teach a lot of technology, programming, and electronics and this kind of thing. So we're developing at STEAMLabs some classroom activity guides that they're firmly grounded in playful learning, but they teach the traditional school curriculum subjects for a given grade in this high-tech way, and then the teachers are very accepting of this because they know they don't know how to teach the technology things, and then we go into the class and help them do it. They can really see the benefits and how engaged they are, and having success by having this kind of ground up kind of infiltration rather than trying to convince the school board, like, do something like this for the whole board. Just one teacher at a time.
Yeah.
Parent councils to fund it. We're looking for other funding sources too to just get in there and show them, and hopefully affect their thinking for the rest of their curriculum too. And we're going to publish these on our website too, to just get it out there to anybody who wants to use this kind of activity, because the more material we all have to share, the more impact we can all make around the world.
That's great, Andy. And I saw also in the description of your program that you're also working with libraries actually to incorporate some of the work that you're doing within what they have to offer for children, right?
Yeah, exactly. The exact same approach. We've developed a bunch of different technology activities for librarians of how to do toy hacking or 3D printing or Arduino, and having the free activity guide so they can run it on their own, and then training so we can teach them how to do it. And we're also starting to put together some technology packs. So it's because we're finding librarians and teachers asking us frequently, like, what do we buy to just make this happen? So, like our power system activity, we're just putting together a kit where we're just give you all the parts you need to run this, and some instructions on how to do it, so that assists them in doing it.
That's great. Great. Well, I know we only have a few minutes left, and I wanted to give each of you maybe a chance to maybe have any final closing thoughts or points that you might make, and also ask you really about if in summarizing that, how you see your organization going forward and kind of continuing the work that you're doing. I know Andy just a bit about the work that you're going to be doing in libraries and are doing in libraries. Sara, also the work that you'll be doing actually diagnosing in real time. But I'm curious if you could expand on each of your projects just a little bit in terms of what you're kind of going forward to, and also provide any kind of closing thoughts on our discussion. So let me start with, since Andy just had the floor, let's start with Emilyn.
Sure. So right now the community science workshops are in 5 cities in California. They're all low-income cities. A lot of them are either inner-city neighborhoods or rural agricultural communities, so farm worker families. And we've got 2 main goals for our work going forward. We've worked really hard to saturate the communities that we're in with our science programs. So we have our drop-in centers, but we also work with after-school programs. We also do programs during the school day. We also work with community college kids who need to get their volunteer hours. They come and work for us. We work with the migrant program. So, and we send programs to libraries, and we do field trips to local science museums. So we're trying to tie it all together. So one of our big focuses for the next couple of years is going to be on thinking of our programs as a hub for an ecosystem of learning. So that, and that's it's connected to playful learning because it's on and off for different activities. There's a kid, and they move through the world, and it's all interconnected for them. Everything that they're encountering is related to each activity. So we're really looking at the way our programs can be even better at connecting all the existing kinds of science education that's going on in a community, and trying to make it all more playful by connecting it and by tying it into our own informal and our drop-in programs. One of the ways we're doing that is we're working more closely with schools, again because of the new science standards in the states that have provision for looking at skills and dispositions. That's an entry for us because a lot of teachers in school districts are saying things like, it says here that I have to have the kids ask questions as part of science coursework. How can I possibly do that? How can I possibly have kids ask questions? Which, from the point of view of our kind of work, is like, really? Like, what are you doing with children then? But it's an opportunity for us to do, we're going to hopefully be doing inquiry trainings with in-school teachers so that they can pick up some of our playful methods and take them into the classroom. So that's one of the areas that we want to work on in the future. We also are always interested in more cities. There are so many kids out there who don't have a science center or a making program or a teaching program to go to. So many farm worker communities, rural communities, so many inner city neighborhoods that are effectively walled off from the museums in their own cities. Really we'd always like to expand and to be in more, put our programs in more cities if we can. Oh. I think he's frozen.
Yeah.
So, Sarah, do you want to talk about where you guys are going?
I can go. So, well, we have like 3 areas we want to work at. One of them is to try to go mainstream to get to more people, to more kids. So we are trying to do this, trying to establish a collaboration with a video game studio, like a really big one. So we are talking with them, and they seem interested. So that would be awesome because we could use like their channels to get to a lot of more people. And then we also want to improve or to increase our collaboration with teachers, so we can do more educational materials to go with the game. And the last part is to try to do this in real time. As I was telling you, we want to go to Mozambique next month, try to see if we can take the pictures and like in 3 minutes to have a real result with the players. Yeah, that's like the goal. We'll see how it goes, but it would be awesome.
Wow.
I think we lost my.
Oh.
It's you, Andy.
Okay. That sounds awesome. I really like your plans, Emilyn and Sara. So at STEAMLabs, we're just setting up a new space that we're really excited about. So that's one of our biggest things for the future. We're creating a new makerspace in downtown Toronto in partnership with the Centre for Social Innovation, which is a large group of co-working space it's sort of like an incubator for social innovators. People are changing the world, and really excited about that partnership because we want to do more things with purpose and programs for kids and adults where they're actively trying to solve some of these problems that we've been talking about, and also the larger social and environmental problems with the world. So we're launching a Kickstarter campaign tomorrow to equip this space. So if you want to help us spread the word, you can go to our website at STEAMLabs.ca to help us announce that. And we're going to have some rewards like the technology packs for some of the activities we've done. And there's some free resource kits that you can download there too. We've got a really nice Internet of Things teaching kit for non-technical audiences to teach some really interesting Arduino-based programming and electronics to kids. And and for the future, we're looking at having more programs in our space, and also publishing more and more. We want to really document our model and help other people set up community hubs around the world that are a similar model, and just publishing more of this curriculum and delving into new areas. I think that self-confidence and self-discovery and weaving some more soft skills into our programs and documenting that and publishing that as well is going to be a big way that we can help the world. And so I'm looking forward to publishing that. We have a mail list too on our site if you want to be informed about those kinds of things when we publish them. So I'm excited.
That's great. It's really exciting. So thank you all for that summary. Sorry, I think I got knocked off again. But I really appreciate your patience with the technology, and also really engaging in great discussion. Thanks to Ashoka for putting this together. We can continue the conversation online to learn. It's play the number 2 and learn. And we'll go from there. So good luck with everyone on your individual projects, and we look forward to being in touch in the future. Thanks.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.